Veritas Aquitus by Bones Boy 15, Chapter 13. It gets real. How the hell did we lose track of a guy with neon blue hair, the heiress to the Sneed Dust Company, and a girl wearing a red hood? Sasuke asked incredulously as he and Haku walked around the CCT, a massive tower that was developed in Atlas to unify the four kingdoms after the war. Mere minutes after they had arrived, they were subjected to Ruby's awe of the tower. Haku and Sasuke were separated from their group by a passing wave of tourists. One of the tourists, a man who looked to be a construction worker of some sort, if his Vale Construction Company shirt was anything to go by, stopped directly in front of them. He looked them over, smiled, and said, "Neat," before he blinded the two teens with the flash camera. Sasuke silently vowed vengeance on the man when he rubbed the flash out of his eyes. I believe it was possible that Ruby's discovery of Penny distracted her from her purpose for arriving, Haku mused. I wonder why she turned and ran, though. She's hiding something, Sasuke deducted. Something that we aren't supposed to know. Is she a student at Haven? Haku asked. Sasuke shook his head. No, Kurama never mentioned her in his debriefing. Ah, Haku nodded and looked at his teammate. So now what? Do we continue our research or should we go into the station to investigate? Might as well go do what we came here to do, Sasuke mumbled as they turned back towards the CCT. They walked in silence for a while until a loudspeaker and hologram appeared in front of them. The new Adlesian defense display will begin shortly. Please make your way to the CCT gardens. Haku and Sasuke exchanged a look before they shrugged. They had nothing better to do. The two teammates walked to the gardens, a vast area filled with flowers from around the world, mostly those of the aesthetic variety. Set in front of the entrance was a large platform with a 10 or 12-foot thing hidden by a tarp draped over it. Sasuke crossed his arms and idly wondered what was to be displayed in front of them. A hologram of the Elysian Academy headmaster and the general of the Elysian army appeared on stage in front of the tarp. James Ironwood, a man dressed in a white suit and red tie, with a glove over his right hand and a bar of some sort above his right eyebrow, while his neatly trimmed hair gave him the look of a military officer. He smiled at the gathered few and the seated officials at the front before he clapped his hands together. Welcome, residents of Vale. Today is a grand day, beautiful and clear, but like any day, it could always change. James' smile fell and he became serious. Our time of peace is not long, and many of you are familiar with the attacks by the White Fang and the Fourth War occurring both here and across the seas. Fear is present in all of your faces, and I assure you, you are not the only ones afraid. I am afraid for my students, my soldiers, my people, my friends. I am afraid for Remnant. He certainly does know how to reassure a crowd, and Sasuke mumbled as he crossed his arms. The others gathered began to murmur worriedly at his words. Sasuke shook his head. Probably not his choice of words to start with, but we will fear no longer, Ironwood declared firmly as his hands folded behind his back. Atlas is determined to ensure that peace is prolonged, and these terrorists will not sway us. We will not bow quietly into the night so that they may try to eradicate human or faunus. We will not surrender without a fight to protect our home. Or to protect our home. We will survive. We will press on. We will end this tyranny. But to do this, we need to be better. We need to be more prepared for our enemies. Ironwood held his gloved hand out and the tarp fell. Sasuke's eyes balked at the monstrosity before him. A solid 12 feet high, with steel covering its parts, was a massive machine. It was armed to the teeth and had a cockpit in the dead center. Two enormous rocket packs were on the shoulders of the machine, and two cannons of some sort on the arms. This is not a good sign, Haku mumbled. Sasuke had to nod in agreement to that. Behold, the newest advancement in technology warfare from Atlas to combat these terrorists and ensure that our peace remains intact. Ironwood's hologram stepped aside and admired the machine. The Legion Paladin 290. I've seen enough, Sasuke decided after a moment. As have I. To the tower? Let's go. Damn, Haku said with a grimace as his attempts to guess Weiss's access code to the Sneedus company failed. I was certain that glyph would have worked. The login ID was correct. I told you to not worry about the Schnee information, Sasuke said from his console. Should have just looked for headlines like I am. Have you found anything? Haku asked. Sasuke did not answer him, and Haku furrowed his brow. He walked over and watched as Sasuke began to search through the files of Fourth War terrorist attacks. His eyes narrowed after a certain name came up at a different point in each record before Sasuke clicked a link to a new headline. Sasuke, who is Itachi? Sasuke's face darkened and he closed the links. It is your dark past, I take it? Haku asked. He decided to back off. I will leave it be. No, you deserve to know. Sasuke cut him off. The raven-haired teen rubbed his eyes. Not Kurama, no. I'm sure that's why Naruto sent me here with you. He wanted you to be told. I'm told about this. Itachi? Haku asked with a confused frown. Yes, Sasuke said as he opened a new window and entered the name into the search bar. Sasuke looked at Haku gravely. This is my goal, my reason for becoming a hunter, and at one point it was my reason for living, to find and bring that man to justice. Like I said, Naruto and Kurama know this is why I started my path, and they've offered their help countless times once we resolved our differences. But this is something I want to do alone. I am not afraid of it. I do not hide from it. Read. Sasuke stepped out of the way so that Haku could read the window he'd opened. As the feminine boy read the screen, Sasuke continued with his dialogue. 7 years after the disaster of the Fourth War attack that occurred nearly 2 decades ago, a team of hunters from Vacuo's academy was found slaughtered by what seemed to be Grim. There was one survivor who was not present. It is believed he betrayed his teammates, two who were an outspoken faunus/human couple, and another faunus who joined the Fourth War. Sasuke paused and Haku opened another page, revealing a gruesome crime scene at a small house. That man was a prodigy of a family known for faunus hatred and doomed his family to shame. His father couldn't handle the shame and went mad, murdering his wife and then himself. And when the village's police force arrived on the scene, he died from the officer's weapons while he was attempting to kill that man's only living relative. Haku sighed heavily at the image of a small, wide-eyed boy with raven black hair wrapped in a blanket. He's your brother, Haku realized. Sasuke nodded. It's my duty to my parents to bring him to justice, to discover the truth. Perhaps it is for the best that we had lost track of the others. Haku mused. He looked at Sasuke and put a hand on his shoulder. Thank you, Sasuke, for trusting me with this. It isn't a matter of trust, Haku, Sasuke said honestly as he looked down. When I was young, there was no doubt that I hated Faunus and that man. I was not afraid to proclaim it. I made it very clear what my goal was. Then, Haku fished. Sasuke leaned back against the wall and chuckled lightly. I met Naruto. Naruto pulled me from the darkness when we were young, forced me into sunlight. We became friends, and in time, I overcame my hatred for Faunus. I decided to live with the goal of finding him, to learn why he did what he did, and bring him to justice for his crimes. How did Naruto do that? Haku asked. Sasuke smiled. He kicked my ass. Really? Broke my arm so bad it nearly had to be amputated? And you became his friend? Sasuke shrugged. Felt it was better to be his friend than his enemy. And at the time, I decided that he'd be a good measuring stick, or a tool to use on, That's a bit much, don't you think? Not really. Still considering it, too. So how did you and Kurama get along then? That's a long story. Sasuke chuckled as he logged out of the computer and began to walk towards the exit. Let's go see if we can find the girls and the nerd, shall we? It really is a miracle that the White Fang have not been found, Kurama said dryly as he, Sun, and Blake walked into an abandoned warehouse that had 3 small white lines outside the door, similar to claw marks. Really, the one organizing this whole shindig is unbelievably clever. I tip my hat to him. Shut up, Kurama, Blake mumbled. Meouch. Sun snickered, but stopped when Blake snapped a glare at the 2 faunus males. Shut up. Everyone is here believes in the White Fang's purpose. If you want this plan to work, you need to act like you give a damn too. Well, shit, when you put it that way, Kurama said softly as he scratched his neck sheepishly. Blake turned on a dime and stormed into the building. Kurama looked at Sun, who shrugged back at him before the 2 followed the feline faunus. Blake stopped at the end of a hallway and signaled the 2 to do the same. Okay, looks like there's only one way in. Would you like to go in first, or would you like to follow our lead? Blake asked Kurama. After you, princess, Kurama offered. He arched the red brow when Blake and Sun put on white masks that covered their eyes. What are those? Grim masks, Blake said. She held one out to him. Humans made the White Fang out to be monsters, so we don't masks of monsters. Talk about becoming what you hate, Kurama mumbled as he took the mask. He lifted a head up to his sunglasses, and the other 2 faunus stared intently at him. Do you mind? Mind what? Sun asked. Oh, it's going to be like that, huh? Fine. Kerma spun around and back, having replaced his sunglasses with the mask. He looked around with a hum. I think these are cooler than my Pinleys. Damn, man, that's harsh. Sun frowned alongside Blake. He looked at the cat-eared faunus with an arched brow. I guess we'll have to try again another time. Lead the way, Blake. Blake nodded and led the monkey-tailed faunus into the meeting area. Kermit watched them disappear into the room and mentally counted to 7, an odd number also known for luck, because who arrives exactly 5 or 7 seconds after another person? He had to make it seem completely coincidental to be safe. When the count was up, Kerma rounded the bend and jogged down when he saw the door closing, mentally cursing the fact that his plan formed to avoid coincidence and suspicion had backfired. Kerma held his hand out and burst into a sprint to catch the door. Wait, I'm here. The guard, a hooded faunus with a white fang grunt attire, opened the door back up and shook his head when his hidden gaze fell on the fox-tailed faunus. I'm cutting it close, aren't you? Kerma took a page from Naruto's playbook and sheepishly scratched the back of his head while his tail swished back and forth. Sorry, my boss was hassling me again. I had to run all the way here to avoid a confrontation with the police. Anger get the best of you? The nervous laughter answered the grunt's question, and he grunted. Great, another hothead. Just what we need. All right, get in here and keep your voice down, all right? Friggin' newbies. Sorry again, Kerma said as he slipped by the guard and disappeared into the crowd. He saw Sun and Blake closer to the stage than he would have liked, but there was nothing he could do about it. Kerma scanned the room and looked for any potential exits. There was a window on the far side, on the far right, and he could slip right through the door he had entered through. As Kerma looked behind him, he caught a scent that he hadn't smelt in a long time. Curious and a bit worried of the potential problem that could arise, Kerma followed the scent to the far back, where a masked faunus with a white hoodie and black letters of PTA across the chest. The Poorly Tempered Animals, or PTA, is a musical group that used rhythmical lyrics and a steady beat to express their disgust with corrupt law enforcement and racist officials in power. It was very popular among young faunus living in large cities, but the music was banned from radio play due to the promoting of violence featured in the lyrics. However, the attire was not what grabbed Kurama's attention. It was the dark horns that stood out against the platinum blonde hair on the faunus's head. The left horn was halfway shaved off of the faunus's head, as though it were filed down. Kurama growled and pushed the horn faunus back when he was within reach. You horned son of a bitch! Kurama snarled as he grabbed the faunus's hoodie and pulled him close. What the fuck are you doing here? Kurama, shit man, keep it down! He hissed as he pushed Kurama's hand down. You're going to blow my cover. Cover. Are you pulling a string right now, you stupid? Where the hell have you been, you bastard? Kurma's voice was low and dangerous as he glared at the other faunus. Kurma, not now, man. No, we're talking now. It's not the time. Yuki, we're going to make it. Yuki, you're going to make time, whether you like it or not. Kurma snarled dangerously. Yuki, the faunus in question, scowled at him. Fine, fine. You're going to screw everything up. Where the hell have you been? Kurma growled as he crossed his arms and his tail flipped. Me, I've been doing what I told Dad I wanted to do. I've been making the world a better place. I've been bringing the gap between human and faunus legally. Yuki added quickly when he saw Kurma's tail flick once more. Yuki looked around and reached into his hoodie's front pocket, withdrawing a leather case and flipping it open. A bronze badge with the words Investigating Hunter of Remnant across the top, an image of the shattered moon in the center, and the words To Pursue Truth across the bottom. Holy shit, you're a spook. Volume. Yuki grit out as he shoved his wallet back in his pocket. I've been coming to these meetings for 3 months, and I finally managed to convince the higher-ups of this area that I'm another anti-human fanatic. Do not blow it. Kurma clenched his fist, his disbelief still visible on his face, though his eyes were hidden. All this time we thought you were dead. Well, obviously I'm not. Now shut up. The boss is talking. Yuki growled and pushed Kurama so that the fox-tailed faunus would turn around. They watched the white-fanged lieutenant promote hatred and introduced a co-conspirator, Roman Torchwick. He was met with boos and jeers, but kept his cool and even took it with a grin. Kurama had to give it to the wanted criminal. He had huge ones, but his next words confirmed that what Kurama thought. His huge ones were in another's hands. My benefactor has gotten hold of this wonderful contraption, first of many to be dealt out to our so patient and endearing animal friends. Behold, your salvation! Toshwick declared grandiosely, with his arms spread out as the red curtain behind him dropped. Kurma's jaw popped open, and murmurs exploded throughout the crowd. Behind Toshwick was a 12-foot behemoth of machinery, armed to the teeth and branded with the white fang symbol. "This is so beyond not good," Yuki said under his breath. Kurama nodded in agreement with him. "We are so fucked," Kurama thought as Toshwick began to drivel out specifications of the Paladin 290. "Us, nothing. This could be the straw that broke the camel's back," Yuki mumbled. "This could reignite the dwindling fires of the war." "Come forward, new brothers and sisters," the lieutenant cried. "Come forward and make your vows. Declare your oaths. Prepare for victory over the humans." Many of the new Faunus applicants began to rush forward, eager to join the fight for freedom. Kurma saw Torchwick's gaze linger and squint on a certain duo, and he swore under his breath. Before he could act, there was a gunshot and the lights suddenly went out. "Shit, what was that?" Yuki asked under his breath, while the crowd started to panic. "A problem. Get going. Report back to your boss. We'll talk later." Kurma pushed Yuki towards the exit while the Wafanis clambered around to get to his companions. Yuki looked back at him with a brief nod before he disappeared into the crowd. Kurma looked over towards Blake and Son, who were fighting their way to a window on the second floor. "Stop them! Don't let them get away!" Touchwick ordered while he fumbled around on stage to find the hatch of his mech. Kurma pulled the concealed Rikudo from his back and extended it out into its spear form. He grabbed a nearby member of the White Fang and drained him of aura to the point that he lost consciousness. "There's another one! Fire!" Kurma ducked behind an overturned refreshment table as a hail of bullets rang out. Many new faunish cried out in fear and ran for the exits. Kurma twisted a pole out of Rikudo so that his weapon would shift into its rifle form. Kurma made a few blind shots and scowled when he heard a mechanical hiss. "Damn, looks like Torchwick is in his new toy." A loud boom had Kurma pop his head up to see a gaping hole in the warehouse wall. The lights and sounds of El's twilight filtered in while the massive paladin rushed out. "Oh crap," Kurma mumbled before he ducked back down behind cover. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his pocket scroll, a variant of the Academy scroll. A read of his thumb and the device slid open. "Guys, answer the scroll. It's Kurma. We've got a problem." The trip from Beacon to Yang's contact was a long one. Even at the crazy speed Yang went, Naruto didn't complain. The speed had made for a good excuse to cling to his girlfriend's back, and when she asked, he had said that she was being poked because of the motorcycle's vibrations. It wasn't entirely true, but it wasn't entirely false either. Not that Yang really minded. "It's okay, my baby Bumblebee makes me excited too," Yang told him over the wind. "Really gets the blood pumping." For a moment, Naruto was tempted to ask if they could make a detour after she said that. Then his concussion had to then his conscience had to be a damn cockblock and make itself known. As much as he tried not to, Naruto's thoughts drifted to the situation concerning himself, Yang, and Emerald. Naruto hadn't thought about it since the night before, and of all the times his thoughts go to his ex, it's right when he's practically clinging to his new, less than a month girlfriend on her sexy motorcycle when they're going crazy stupid fast. It was times like this that Naruto reluctantly agreed with his friend's assessments of him being an idiot. Thankfully, he was saved from him displaying his idiocy as Yang pulled into a small parking lot outside of a club with a neon blue sign that read "High Days." After she parked, Yang took her helmet off and set it on Bumblebee's handlebars. She looked over her shoulder and grinned at Naruto. "So, think you can manage getting off, Bumblebee?" Naruto laughed and sarcastically at her innuendo. "That's real classy, Yang," says the one with the boner. "Touche." Naruto chuckled as he stood up and adjusted his jacket. He slipped his hands into his pockets and followed Yang as she walked up the steps with a confident smile on her face. A tall man stood in front of the door with a clipboard in hand. He was built like a brick wall, so Naruto correctly assumed he was the bouncer. The bouncer wore a buttoned-up shirt with a red tie, a black vest, a matching dress slacks, and very expensive-looking shoes. Reddish black oval sunglasses hid his eyes, and his hair was shaved off entirely. The bored bouncer didn't look up from his clipboard when the two blondes walked up to the stage. "IDs, please." Yang's smile turned into a grin. She leaned over to whisper into her boyfriend's ear. "Watch this. Dinner and a show. You spoiled me." Naruto returned with a small grin of his own as she returned her attention to the bouncer. "You know what? Yang's voice made the bouncer freeze and pale. I think this place looks better than it did the last time I was here. New neon, a nice new door, and are those designer shoes? I hope that's not all the compensation that was given to you after I tossed you through a window. The bouncer slowly looked up, sparing only a second to look at Yang's breast, and before his gaze met Yang's. Naruto was a bit irritated that the man looked at his girlfriend's chest, but he was more impressed that the bouncer decided Yang's identity was more important to him than ogling the wondrous bust Yang loved to display. Naruto was very aware that Yang was attractive, even a blind man could see that, but she was still her new boyfriend, and there was a bit of concern that someone would try something stupid like hit on her. The saving grace for most that would try this, that Naruto knew Yang was a flirt, but she was not loose, as some would believe. The promiscuous girl was a mask, an act to ward off those that would try to delve deeper. Naruto was one of the rare few to witness her drop her masks, one of her true friends. This bouncer, however, was not. Poor bastard, looked like he was going to start shooting bricks in his expensive pants. Naruto almost felt bad for the guy. Then he remembered that the bouncer had ogled Yang's chest. Sure, it was only a second, but like Naruto said before, he was still her new boyfriend with a few mild concerns. Ah, retribution. You're blacklisted. The bouncer managed to get out after a moment of staring. He slowly put his pen in his other hand so that his now free hand could slowly move down to his hip where radio was attached. Blacklisted? Why? Look at the new stuff I got you, Yang complained as she gestured at the apparently refurbished front doors. Junior's orders, not mine. The bouncer apologized sincerely. His hand was mere centimeters from hitting the panic button on his radio. Yang pouted and crossed her arms under her chest. What a jerk. He's the one that started it. As much as Naruto wanted to believe that, he really doubted it. Deciding that they were wasting enough time, Naruto stepped forward and put a hand on Yang's shoulders. Let me try. Yang turned and frowned at him. Give me 5 more minutes, Whisker Boy. I can get us in, no problem. The bouncer's hand shot down like a serpent to grab the radio, only to grab air. He looked down, panicked at the sight of his missing radio, and looked back up when Naruto cleared his throat. In Naruto's hand was the radio he was looking for, and the whiskered blonde grinned at him. Now don't go doing something you'll regret, Naruto warned. His hand squeezed and the radio exploded. Whoops. Sorry, I didn't want to drop the radio, so I held onto it real tight. Oh God, there's two. Naruto's eyes twitched. His smile became strained, and his raised hand balled into a fist. Why does everyone keep saying that? The bouncer was unable to answer, for when Naruto said the word that, his fist had driven itself into the bouncer's face and had sent the bouncer flying through the doors. Naruto took a soft breath and relaxed. He looked around in mild confusion when he saw that the bouncer had disappeared. Yang sniggered. Lose something, Naruto? Where'd the other guy go? Naruto asked. Yang held her side as she laughed, and Naruto frowned. What? What happened? Nothing. Yang sniggered as she whipped her a tear from her eye and recomposed herself. She looped her arm around Naruto's and grinned at him. Door's open. Let's go say hi. Okay. You know that guy should really get fired. I mean, disappearing on the job like that. Not cool. High Days was a really popular place, it seemed, and a bit of a sausage fest. There were a ton of guys that were dressed like the bouncer, only they were much scrawnier. Each one that tried to stop them with a weapon were either taken out by Yang, who punched their lights out in one go, or Naruto, who simply backhanded them hard enough that when they hit the wall, they slumped to the ground. The gauntlets on the blonde's hands probably helped with that. Yang's dual-ranged short gauntlets, Ember Silica, were more slender than Naruto's bulky Stormbreakers, but no less heavy. The shotgun chains were better concealed than Naruto's slug clips, which extended out from the side of Naruto's forearms at an odd angle. However, Naruto's gun barrels were hidden under the large bricks on the backside of his hands, with his insignia drawn on it where Yang's were always out in her fight. Naruto's orange brick hands, as Yang so crudely called them, left quite a welt on his opponents, while the barrels of Yang's golden gloves were nearly punctured the skin. Yeah, well, at least when I'm walking up to someone, they can't tell if Ember Silica is my only weapon or not. Yang returned after Naruto criticized the damage her weapon did, even when not using the lethally application of it. I'm a tank and I'm proud of it, Naruto stated with a shrug as he looked at his right arm. The orange metal on the back of his hand did look like a brick. Maybe he should make some modifications to his weapons. He looked back at his girlfriend with a small smile. But you've got a point. Maybe I should fine-tune it so my forearms don't look like blocks when Stormbreaker is concealed them. You should make bracelets. No, Naruto denied flatly. But we could match, Yang whined. She crossed her arms and pouted when he didn't budge. Fine, keep your dumb brick arms. Naruto arched a brow and used his left thumb to press a hidden button on his palm. The gauntlets on his arms collapsed back into their brick form, and he hummed as he looked them over. The brick started at his wrist and went back to just before his elbow joint. Naruto shrugged and interlaced his hands behind his head. Didn't hear you complaining when we were riding Bumblebee. I was more focused on the thing poking me in the ass. Yang returned with a huff. And the road? Sure. That answer mildly worried Naruto, but he got over it as they came up to a large pair of sliding double doors that slammed shut. That's rude. Very rude. Maybe it's an early night. They could be locking up. We should knock and find out. Naruto looked at Yang, who had a small grin on her face, and her gauntlets were still active. He took a step in the opposite direction of the doors and watched as Yang cocked her fist back. Yang threw her punch, and a shotgun blast rang out. The doors flew off of their rails and landed on the dance floor with a loud bangs. People in the club stopped dancing, and a record started to skip. Well, what do you know? They aren't locked up, Yang. I can see that, Naruto. They must not have wanted us to show up the posers on the dance floor, Yang said with a cheesy grin. Immediately, no less than 20 dozen guns were pointed at the two blondes, mostly focused on Yang. Yang held her hands up and laughed. All this just for me? I'm flattered, boys, but I'm spoken for. I think I'm sort of jealous. Naruto stood with his own little grin as he returned to stand beside his girlfriend with his hands in his pockets. A gun prodded him in the side of his head. You'll speak when you're spoken to, the growled. Are we playing Simon Says? I hate that game, Naruto mumbled. The record was stopped, and the people who hadn't already fled the dance floor started to do so. A man that was dressed in a fine ensemble similar to the bouncer at the door clapped his back-gloved hands once and walked up towards the group. He had short but thick dark hair that looked like it crawled down his jawline and framed his mouth. All right, boys, that's enough self-esteem building for today, he said dryly. The man hesitated and his eyes narrowed. I said enough. The group of thugs lowered their weapons and started to back away. Naruto matched the man's gaze and his arms crossed over his chest. You must be Simon. The man arched their brow and looked at Yang. I was hoping that if you ever came back, you'd be alone again. Don't mind him, Junior. He's just eye candy. Naruto gave his girlfriend a hurt pout and she patted his cheek. Yang turned to grin at the man and she called Junior. So, you wanted me to come back? No. No, Junior deadpanned. He sighed and walked back towards the bar, waving his hand. Come on, let's get this over with before any more damage is done. So quick to jump to conclusions that I did anything, Young huffed as she and Naruto followed the club owner. There's a bit of blood on your top, Junior drawled as he slipped behind the bar and began to clean a glass. Yang looked down at her top and, sure enough, there was a red drop on the panel outside of her black shirt. Emerald silica folded into compact bracelets, and Yang wet her thumb lightly with spit to wipe it away. Naruto's narrow lilac eyes landed on Naruto, who arched her brow. What? I told you that your gauntlets were bleeders. But you didn't tell me about the blood on my top, Yang hissed. Naruto shrugged. You could barely see it, and besides, it's not like he couldn't see what we were doing with the small security cameras that's in his bar. Right about here. Naruto reached up over the bar's counter while a stupefied Junior stared at him in mock. Naruto pursed his lips and fiddled around for a moment before he grinned. Bingo! Wait, no, that's... Junior groaned as Naruto yanked out a small screen that looked like the bar's countertop on the back. Wires dangled from the screen along with two metal rods in the side. Junior glowered at the cheekily grinned blonde. Expensive. I've decided I don't like you. Oh darn. I was going to invite you to my slumber party. Naruto returned dryly before he choked the screen over his shoulder. A shutter was heard in the distance. Oops, sorry. Butterfingers. Wait, what do you want, Blondie? Junior asked as his gaze went back to Yang, who was looking at Naruto with a furrowed brow. How'd you know that was there? Yang asked her boyfriend, who was a bit surprised by the sudden turnabout in personality. Naruto looked at her and then at Junior. I saw it in the reflection of the glass he was cleaning. It was to be hidden so he could blackmail potential clients or identify anyone that tried to rob him. I'm guessing the security room that your man operated in is just a ruse. That way, if it's targeted, no real harm is done. After all, why trust a bunch of idiots with your business venture security? I really don't like you, kid. Junior glowered while Yang gaped. Naruto grinned again and leaned against the bar. Buddy, you wouldn't be the first to say that. Wow, I knew you had something between your ears, Naruto, but I wasn't expecting that. Yang said, which prompted Naruto to wink at her. Both blondes turned back to the club owner, and Yang leaned on the bar with arms crossed as she narrowed her eyes. So, what have you and Torchwick been up to lately? Who? Junior asked with a brow arched. His eyes flicked to the right and back fast, but not fast enough to be unseen. Naruto suddenly followed the gaze and saw two girls, twins, who were seated not far away in a booth. One was dressed in red and black, the other silver and cyan. The twins had their gaze on the three conversing individuals. They must be Junior's real muscle, and apparently had something against Yang if the narrowed glare was anything to go by. Don't play dumb, Yang said with a frown. Naruto returned his attention to the conversation when his girlfriend pointed at Junior. I saw him here, and I'm fairly certain that enough Lien could convince others that they did too, enough to get police curious. Are you threatening me? Junior asked as he set his glass down and he narrowed his eyes on Yang. Are you stupid? Yang countered as a smirk spread across her face. You lost against one. Remember how much you want to bet you'll lose against two? Junior pursed his lips and sighed. Point taken. All right. Yes, I did do some business with Torchwick when you first came here, but I haven't seen him since. What kind of business? Yang asked. Junior shrugged and crossed his arms. The usual. Torchwick hired my boys for a job. Guys, he wasn't pleased with them. Guys, he wasn't pleased with then though, since he hasn't come back for any more. Not that I can blame him. Junior's gaze went to his men that were trying to clean the door up before he looked back at Yang. Anything else? You didn't do any other business with him? Yang asked. Junior shook his head. Yang frowned and leaned away from the bar. I guess we're done here then. Naruto didn't. He put his hand on the counter, and when he pulled it back, there was a green Lian card. I want something else. Information. Naruto? Naruto looked at Yang for a second before he looked back at Junior. She grabbed his arm and tried to pull him along, but he didn't move. He decided on something that was bothering him, and after a moment of internal debate, Naruto decided to get this over with. The club owner looked at Lian before he looked at Naruto. What do you want to know? What do you know about a girl named Emerald Sustring? End of chapter 13.